It's episode 147 of the Author Stories podcast. I'm your host, Hank Garner. Thank you so much for tuning in this year. We're coming up to the end of 2016 and running up really quickly on episode 150. I just want to take a moment to wish all of you a Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, whatever it is that you celebrate. I hope that you have a great time this month with your family and your friends, and take a moment to reflect back on all of the things that made 2016 great. I know it's been a really tough year for a lot of folks, but thank you from the bottom of my heart for listening to Author Stories. I hope you've gotten something out of it, as much as I've gotten out of bringing the show to you. Find all of the archives over at hankgarner.com, and when you're there, please click on the subscribe button. Subscribe at iTunes and Google Play, and please leave a comment when you do. Also, this week I'd like to remind you that Audible is a sponsor of the Author Stories podcast. If you like audiobooks as much as I do, I hope that you'll go to audibletrial.com/Hank. Sign up for a free 30-day trial. Get a free audiobook. If you don't like the service, cancel at any time. Keep the book forever for free. Also visit ThirdScribe.com. If you're a writer and you need help getting your work out there, ThirdScribe can help. If you're a reader and you want to find new books and authors, ThirdScribe can help. They're helping connect readers and writers. ThirdScribe.com. Now stay tuned for this spot for After the Pretty Pox. It's worse than that. God will ignore us entirely. A searing act of bioterrorism. A catastrophic plague they call the Pretty Pox. Most of the human race is dead, and for 2 years Ari McInnes has been alone, riding out the aftermath of the Pretty Pox, waiting for her own inevitable end. Hidden in the attic of her ruined home, Ari survives by wit and skill, ritual and habit. Convinced that humans are a dangerous fluke, a problematic species best allowed to expire, she chooses solitude, even in matters of life and death. Ari's precarious world is upended when her youngest brother, a man she's never met, appears out of nowhere with a badly injured woman. Their presence in the attic draws the attention of a dark watcher in the woods, and Ari is forced to choose between the narrow beliefs that have sustained her and the stubborn instinct to love and protect. In Book 1 of August Ansel's captivating new post-apocalyptic series, After the Pretty Pox, cast an unwavering eye on what it means to be human in a world where nature has the upper hand, and the only rules left to live by, for good or ill, are the ones written on our hearts. After the Pretty Pox, The Attic, by August Ansel is available now on Amazon.com. Check the show notes for the link. Pick up your copy today of After the Pretty Pox, The Attic, by August Ansel. August Ansel is the pen name of Carla Baku. Find her website at www.carlabaku.com. Thanks for joining me again for the Author Stories podcast, where I bring you the story behind the stories and the storytellers. Today on the show, very excited to have one of my personal favorite authors join me again for a follow-up talk. The last time I had Brent Weeks on the show, we got about half of his story down, and I begged him to come back and have a follow-up chat with me. And so Brent has a new book that's been out just a couple of weeks now in the Lightbringer series. It's book 4 called The Blood Mirror. And I'm so happy to have you back on the show. Brent, thanks for coming.
Oh, well, thanks, Hank. It's obviously we had a great time last time, so it's good to return.
Absolutely. So things have been exciting for you here in the last little bit. You just got home from book tour, didn't you?
Yes. This time I think it was about 7 cities in 7 days, and I realized that rock stars are actually made of harder stuff than I'd ever thought. It really depends on your schedule. On your tour. This time I had just because of who was available when, I ended up kind of leapfrogging back and forth across the country. And so whenever you have to make connecting flights and stuff, it just means, and then of course the book signings are evening and nighttime things. So you end up going to bed, after midnight, and we had to get up at 4 a.m. 4 mornings in a row.
Mm.
So that it's
that
things
sucks.
start to seem pretty grim.
Yeah. Writers are not typically used to those 4 a.m. mornings.
No.
Unless you've been up writing all night and you're just going to bed then.
Exactly. Well, it's the combination of being an introvert and meeting 150 strangers, which they're all fans and they're lovely people and it's lovely to meet people, but it takes energy out of you. And then getting 4 hours sleep and then getting on a plane and then doing it again is I suppose extroverts probably really like it, but it's really a challenge. It's so opposite what the rest of the job is that it's wearying. It's one of those good problems to have. It's like, oh my gosh, I went to a signing and so many people showed up. It was awful. You sound like a jerk. So I'll shut up about how hard it was. It was really fun. I got to meet, obviously a lot of people, and meeting booksellers and meeting people who love books is always a pleasure.
Speaking of that, the book industry has changed so dramatically over the last 10 years. Probably, more like 5 has been the real upheaval. But, over about 10 years, there's been a lot of changes in the way we buy books, in the way we read books, in the way we write books and sell books. As you're out there in the wild amongst the people, what are you really seeing as far as, like, how are bookstores doing? How do you see, from being in the perspective that you're in, how do you see the publishing industry morphing, and do you have any insight into what we as writers can do to kind of stay on top of that wave without crashing down on us?
Well, I think we continue to see the kind of what's happening everywhere with globalization is the middle class squeeze. Everybody wants to, if a publisher can get one breakout, mega bestseller, it can pay for a lot of failed gambles. And it's really hard to fight for shelf space at, if bookstores are getting smaller or you're losing shelf space, or, Walmart only wants to carry, 100 books. And 100 books is a lot, but each book publisher maybe can get them to sell 2 or 3 of their books, or people have a limited attention span. So when we go to Goodreads, we go to the Goodreads bestsellers. When we go to or the Goodreads recommends, right? And when we go to Amazon, we look at our first page of recommended titles. Well, shoot, if you're on that first page, you're going to do really well.
Right.
But
it becomes a bit of an echo chamber.
Oh, sure. Yes, it does.
The bestsellers continue to sell because they're bestsellers.
Yes.
And it's kind of the self-fulfilling prophecy.
Absolutely. And there are some stinky books that get there for various reasons. But for the rest of us, I guess that means, just aim for the stars because you got nothing to lose. And if you land someplace where, I know that editors still love writers and editors still love to edit. And like everybody that I've met in the book business is there because they love books. Like they're not just selling widgets. Now at some point there's supply and demand. There's a physical process of getting books out and distributing them that like they are like widgets. But most people who are doing books are like, I do this because it matters to me and I think it changes lives, and I could make more money elsewhere. So you still have editors who want to edit you, who want to nourish you along, who really feel invested in making you a better writer, and in making your second book do better than your first, and your fifth book do better than your fourth. So that still exists. There's just pressure. At the same time, I think the statistics are actually that people are reading more than ever. And there's more avenues for people to get an on-ramp to what felt like kind of that New York conclave. Like now you can self-publish, and if you do that well, you can grow a huge audience, and then a lot of self-published writers who've done really well, then they transition to a traditional publisher because the traditional publisher simply has access to other avenues to spread the word further. And then people can sort of do both. There's a lot of hybrid authors who are very successful and have control of their own career and have, make a lot of money and sell a lot of books. And I think people don't really look down at self-published writers the way they used to. Now it's like, oh, you're self-published? Well, how are you doing? How good are you? Like it doesn't automatically go stamp, oh, you're a hack. Where I think 10 years ago people might have got away with that rubber stamp mentality of that meant something. Now it's like, well, I don't know what that means. Being self-published could be you're a kid in the basement who couldn't get the book published, or it could mean you're making $1 million a year. So
right,
which makes you huge in any industry, right? So
right. Well, and I've said before that there are a lot of parallels right now in publishing to the music industry, and we saw this huge collapse several years ago, and all of these giant contracts went away. Nobody's signing multi-million-dollar deals anymore, and more people are going directly to their audience and building their fan base from the grassroots up. Right. And then you of course there's a lot of folks that find indie success that then because of that indie success jump to a major label and then go to another tier and just keep growing. And then some of these people that have major label success then take the indie route, sure, because they feel they want to have more control. So I see a lot of parallels now that's kind of filtering into the book industry, and I think it's great for writers and for readers. And any time that you kind of shake things up a little bit and say, oh, you know what, we need to remember that we're writing for an audience and really take care of our readers. I think that's a good thing. It's painful in the meantime, but I think it's a good thing ultimately.
Right. I think it is a good thing. And like you asked about what I see in bookstores and what I see in bookstores. I mean, I think recently there have been more indie bookstores opening than closing in the last few years. And I think indies have realized, or bookstores that are still surviving have realized, okay, we simply cannot beat Amazon on price. So what we need to do is we need to have, great staff. And we need to have, obviously intelligent layout of our sections. We need to have good discovery in our bookstore, and then you need to leave our bookstore with a book in your hands. And the best way to do that is if staff talk to you and they say, this is a great book, and they hand it to you, and the book's $16, and you could get it for $12 on Amazon. But this guy just helped you. And so instead of walking home and ordering it on Amazon, you actually, walk to the counter and buy it. And I think those places, I've certainly gone to bookstores, and science fiction fantasy are great about this. The bookstores where people just trust the bookseller, and the owner calls up people and says, oh, this new book came in, I just read it, it's called Red Rising, and you should totally read this. It's going to be great. And some guy told me that 2-3 years ago, when Red Rising by Pierce Brown just came out. And so, I bought the book and didn't read it for a while, but then read it, and Pierce is huge now. So you get to a place where Amazon can't compete with that. They can send you an email saying, we think you'll really like this. And you'll look at it and you'll be like, yeah, it's just another spam email in your box. And so there's a personal connection. And I think when bookstores can look at that and have educated staff, helpful staff, and an intelligent selection for how much square footage they have, specializing a bit, that they can do really well.
Well, we have a big box bookstore in my town. It's a Books a Million. It's a pretty decent sized bookstore. But I found the Black Prism there from a personal recommendation
Fantastic.
from one of the guys that work there, and I love to walk through my store and just see what's new and what's up. And one thing I've noticed is that I remember as a kid going to the bookstore and sci-fi and fantasy were kind of relegated over to the corner, and they had the weird book covers and
Right.
and it was kind of you saw the geeky guys hanging over there, a lot of stuff. Now when you walk in my bookstore, sci-fi and fantasy cover an entire wall going down the side, and it's the most prominent display.
Really?
in the store.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yes, and then the center aisles are always stacked with. They'll have these tables with different series and things like that, things that they're trying to steer people toward. But sci-fi and fantasy have the most square footage and the most attention than any other section in the store, which is crazy. I mean, that's awesome.
Fantastic.
But there's genre fiction has really come into its own. And really being taken seriously, and I love that.
Oh, and that's fantastic, and we really have a succession of the superstars to thank for that. Like that's people like to gripe and moan about people who make 100 times more money a year than they do, but it's like, boy, you had a succession of great fantasy movies come out, and then Lord of the Rings, the Harry Potter books, and you're like, okay, this is a real thing. Like, this is a thing that adults enjoy. And
that great American spirit, should challenge people. This guy did it, so can I.
Right.
We really shouldn't get into jealousy.
Right. No, absolutely. And that's a thing that's really dangerous for writers.
Right.
Because you're doing the same work as any other writer. Like, you're sitting there writing a book, and at the end you've got a book done and you send it in, and for some reason they sell, 10 million copies, and you sell 10,000, and it's really easy to think like they're not better than me. But like, you get into that, and at any stage you're at, you could be Brandon Sanderson and be like, gosh, I'm selling 1 million books a year, but J.K. Rowling is over there, just counting her money, and she has a screenplay come out written by somebody else, and it still outsold me. Like the only person who can't do that is J.K. Rowling. Like, every other writer in the world can do that. So right, exactly. So it's one of those crazy things that is it's dangerous, and writers can do that because we sit alone a lot, right? And
right.
think, and so
Yeah. Too much navel gazing.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, Brent, this is our problem. Is that we get talking about other stuff and we don't talk about what we came to talk about, and so I think I definitely want to talk to you about the new book that you just had come out, but the Lightbringer series specifically. Last time we talked, you told us all about how you got started, and you had this fantastic story about how you really struggled for a while to get that first book sold, and you really had a kind of a moment where this is kind of make it or break and kind of do or die. This has got to happen, and then you've got this great story where the Night Angel trilogy just finds a publisher and breaks out, and your whole life changed. Yeah, and I go back and listen to that sometimes just to remind myself that life is like that sometimes. That right when you are about to give in to despair, good things happen, or can happen. Sometimes just despair happens. but
that guy's not on the podcast today, right?
Yeah, that guy's not on the podcast. Yeah, you can tell I've been thinking too much today. This is what happens when you record at the end of the day. Yeah. So, but like I told you, I discovered you not through Night Angel, like a lot of people did, but through the Lightbringer series that then eventually took me to Night Angel. But one of the things that really excited me about the Lightbringer series was this really unique magic system. First off, tell everybody kind of what the the genesis of this new series was, and I want to talk about magic systems after that. But first, kind of where did the idea was it was the first idea the political intrigue part of it, or did you have a character, or did the magic come first?
A lot of things came kind of all at once. I was in the really enviable position that that I the Night Angel books had come out in 3 months consecutively, and we knew they were doing well because they were going back into printings. But a reprint these days with how good publishers are at forecasting what they need. A reprint could be 1,000 books or 2,500 books. So second reprint, great, 2,500 more books. Well, that's awesome. But they were going into printings over and over, and slowly the printings were getting bigger. And my publisher could see that this was going to do well, and they came to me and they said, Brent, we want your next 3 books. And they didn't say what the books had to be. They just said the next 3. And and writers don't usually get that. like usually you have to write a proposal, and you have to say how long you expect it to be, and you have to say, like, here's a couple chapters. Like, certainly before you're published, before you have a debut novel, you have to have finished a novel, right? But even once you've finished a novel, you have to usually have at least a proposal. And so I was really stuck because I wanted to write more Night Angel. I'd always planned probably another 6 books in that series, although I had a nice ending point there at the end of the trilogy. So I had a lot left to do in that world, but I didn't feel really ready for the like I looked at some of my ideas and I was like, that feels derivative to me. I don't know how to make that better yet. And so I said, you know what, I want to not just write assassin novels for my whole career. So I think I can do other stuff. And so I said, what can I do that's really different than Night Angel while still drawing on my strengths as a writer, something that has a lot of different elements than Night Angel. So I said, well, rather than having a main character who's Kyler isn't quite nondescript, but he doesn't have a ton of sharp edges that keep the reader from putting themselves in Kyler's shoes. And I thought, I want to take on a main character like you haven't seen before. So he's going to be a fat kid, and he's fat, and he's a mixed race kid. And in his world, that has sort of different connotations than it does in our world. And so I said, and I don't want to do a medieval Europe. Like that's great, or a medieval-ish Europe is sort of how Night Angel starts, and it sort of grows as you go along. But that's really nice because you don't have to explain anything. You just sort of say, guys, we're here in a sort of quasi-medieval Europe. And there's magic and stuff, and everybody gets what that is, and you can go without, you can go into the story without spending a lot of time on the world. So I said, I want to do something harder on that front too. And so how about what's cool? And well, the Mediterranean is cool. And I said, okay, so I have this Mediterranean sea basin area in 1600-ish because the Renaissance is going on, and so you've also got you've got some firearms, but they're not reliable, so people can still fight with swords, and then you have magic, and I wanted to have a lot of magic. So that was kind of the genesis, is like, can I do all of these things that are hard? Because having a little bit of magic is in your fantasy world is really easy, because most things work the way we would expect things to work in medieval Europe. But having a lot of magic, anytime you add more magic, you're adding more chances for yourself to screw things up. Like, look, if magic is super common, why don't people use it to cook their food? Why don't they use it to, for refrigerators? Why don't they use it for lighting in their houses? And once you set that ball rolling, all of a sudden this fantasy world looks completely alien. And you have to sit there for pages and pages and describe how stuff actually works. And then, of course, you can make errors because you didn't think through every sociological change that would happen. And so it's like, okay, so more magic is harder from a storytelling perspective to me, who cares about having some intellectual rigor. So that's kind of where I started. Is I started with these things that I wanted to do. And I wondered if I could pull that together with some sort of color magic system. And do you want me to go into the little spiel about so the magic is, I've always been fascinated by light. And I took this amazing college class that was co-taught by a guy who'd shared a Nobel Prize in physics. A philosophy professor and a religion professor, and they talked about how those three intersect, and how they'd intersected through history, and how they intersected now, and talking about what does quantum physics mean for philosophy, or religion, and it was all mind blowing, and of course the mathematician is talking at or the physicist is talking at some points, and he's like, okay, you are all humanities majors, and it's a 400 level class or whatever. So we're all seniors. We're all pretty smart people. It's an honors class or whatever. But he's like, I'm going to write some equations on the board. I'm going to tell you what they mean. You don't know enough math to actually know that they mean what I'm telling you they mean, but they really do. So, and you realize that at certain levels, in expertise, like things become a different language, and it happens in okay, I use this word, but it means something special when I'm speaking in philosophy, and that might like a proof, but that might mean something different in geometry, so, and it means something totally different in colloquial English. So anyway, so there was this mind blowing thing. And we talked about a lot about light, and where our light is where our metaphors break down. Like previously in the West, we would talk about whatever our newest system was. Like, oh, okay, we've discovered hydraulic systems. Well, now we're going to say that arms and legs move like hydraulics, and you put here and things go over here, and ligaments and stuff work that way. And then we talk about the brain as a computer, right? So synapses fire, and they're either on or off, so it's binary, and so we can sort of understand the human system via that metaphor. And then you get to light, and it doesn't work anymore because you say light is like a wave. Okay, everybody kind of gets that, and okay, we can show that actually works. And then you say, some other guy comes along and says, no, light is like a particle. And then he shows some things, and he shows that totally works. Okay, well, we get particles, we get waves. We don't understand particle waves. Like the Schrodinger's cat thing and the dual slit experiments. You like run those, and you're like, I see that I get that works. But how does this photon over here know what that thing is? This spooky action at a distance stuff. That Einstein had trouble with, and he's like, no, this can't be like this. So are we. We're like, no, this doesn't make sense. So light is special, and light to me is magic. And you look in religion, and it's let there be light. In the Christian and Jewish tradition, or sorry, I guess that's from John. So, but whatever. It's oh no, that's Genesis. Anyway, so yeah. John does a slightly different thing. Anyway, so it's magic to me. So I like to look at that, and so I wanted to use light. All that a very long explanation of why I wanted to use light. And I thought color magic would be really nice because nobody had used color magic in fantasy that I knew of, in like 15 or 20 years. So I thought, okay, I'll do sort of a more rigorous sort of scientific magic system using light, and I'll use colors because colors are really nice because everybody understands color. or actually everybody doesn't understand color, but everybody thinks they understand color.
Right. They have some preconceived notions.
So you can say, okay, a blue is cool and logical, and people kind of get that, and a red is passionate and fiery. People kind of get that. Where if you say a yurtguds is cool and logical, and a yakrus is passionate and fiery, like now people have got to be like, crap, I gotta memorize 2 more terms. Except, you go through that with every color. You go through that 7 schools of magic, and people are just sitting there going like, oh my gosh, what is all this crap? Or if you just look at the color, everybody goes, okay, totally get it. Let's go. Greens are wild and free. Got it. Okay. This makes sense to me. And the color spectrum. Okay, that makes sense to me. So I thought color magic could be a really great one to use. And my key idea was pretty simple at the base. I said, in actual science, we take a candle and we burn it, and some complicated stuff actually goes on there. But basically, you have this physical thing, the candle, and it disappears to give you heat and light. And so obviously, it's actually more complicated than that. But that's what we see. And I said, what if you could run that backwards? And you give me light stuff, and I make things out of it. And okay, that's easy enough to grasp, right? And I thought, well, okay, and then let's run that for every color. Well, every color is certainly going to have different properties. And so I went through and I made all the properties for each of the different colors. And I thought, some are going to be brittle, and some are going to be strong, and some are going to fracture, some are going to be springy. And so those are going to be good for different things in their world. And then I thought I took it one step farther, and I said, okay, what if each of these colors also has it has physical properties. It also has weight. They also have smell, so that we can engage all the senses. Just like they're real things, like a piece of wood. They also are physical. So if you throw a fireball, you can throw as big, you can make as big of a fireball in your hand as you want, but it's going to have weight. So if you make one as big as a house, it's going to squash you. So your magicians actually are going to be muscular if they're warriors, because they're actually throwing stuff. It's not all the power of the mind, and things have physical mass. I wanted this really kind of kinetic and physical kind of universe. But so then I took the next step, and I said, okay, not only do they have physical properties, they also have metaphysical properties. And so if you are a passionate person who drafts blue for your whole life, blue is very calm and ordered, it's going to help make you more calm and ordered. Now, it's not necessarily going to take over your whole personality, but it is going to exert an influence on you. So I thought that was interesting. And then I lit a fuse. I said, you can only live so long doing this. Like, this damages your body eventually, and it drives you crazy. Like that effect. And in their world, they think this might be a spiritual effect. There might be something, going on with that's outside the world, or it might just be, look, you use too much power and you go crazy. Sort of like in World War II, they did a lot of actually between World War I and World War II, they started doing a lot of research on shell shock. And what today we would call PTSD, and as of the end of World War II, they were issuing little booklets to guys as they went to fight, and they're trying to figure out how do we keep guys from getting shell shock, and one of the things they figured is, it seems like if we keep guys on the ground for more than 180 days straight, we start getting a ton of this. So we try to rotate guys. So basically, like, you can go do this thing for a certain period of time. This is how the scientists understood it at the time, and not that they're correct or totally correct now with what we know today. But like, I thought, okay, that's kind of an interesting thing for these drafters. They can use a certain amount, and if you're using a little bit a day, your body can heal a lot of that. But if you use a ton, you're going to die. and
Which was one of the coolest things that I found about the series was that there were repercussions. Because like you were talking about earlier, well, if there's a lot of magic in the world, why aren't they cooking their food and refrigerating and all this? And you built in a counterweight to that too. Okay, well, this is why that, everything's not just, and I thought that was one of the most clever things about it.
Well, yeah, thank you. It also helped make a nice limit. I mean, like, okay, some people could make an entire structure out of magic stuff. Luxon, I call it my world, because you derive it from light, so it's Luxon. But that's incredibly expensive, and people can die doing it. So you only are going to have that every once in a while. And people who are wasteful with magic are kind of being wasteful with their lives. And so I thought that was one way to keep things under control, but also one way to keep the magic users from just being ridiculously overpowered. And the other thing is that they need a light source. They need to be able to see their color in order to, like, okay, I want to draft red. I need to be looking at red. I need the photons between 450 nanometers and 420 nanometers or whatever it is to be hitting my eyes in order to make red Luxon. So then you've got guys who wear lenses, but lenses are reductive, so you can look at a white wall through your red lenses and be able to pick up enough of what you need to do what you want. But anyway, so there's a lot of you add these little simple systems together, and they get really complicated as you go along. Which is probably why the series is like 1.2 million words at this point. So yeah.
Oh wow. Yeah. Or one half of one Brandon Sanderson.
Wow, yeah. Yeah. He's done a couple of 400,000 word books. My longest one was 310, I think, which is long. Let's just be frank.
Yeah. I had him on the show a couple weeks ago, and I picked at him about that. So he would take that.
Oh yes, sure. Yeah, he can do that.
He's the master. So, well, a couple of questions rise up as you're talking. First off, just very practically, you came off of this first trilogy with resounding success for a debut author, and you said they immediately said, okay, we want your next 3 books. And in the midst of dreaming up this whole magic system that you're going to build this new world on, and the other things that you wanted to do, a new setting and a new character and all that, at any point during this process, did you just sit back and go, holy crap, how am I going to follow this up?
I think I've done that many times. So I had this delusion. This is silly. After I finished Night Angel, I was like, well, hey, I'm kind of an experienced writer now. I've actually finished a fantasy series, which few people have done. I've written more than 500,000 words. Of published work at that point. I bet I can write my next book in a year, which I'll write another book in a year. That's totally fine. That's totally doable. Of course, I hadn't realized that it took me 10, 15 years to build the world of Night Angel, to build Midkiru and all this stuff. Like I was a student and I first started coming up with this in college and I dreamed about it all the time and I wrote notes and stuff. Like all that work was world building, right? So I'd spent 10 years on world building and then I sit down and I go, okay, I'm going to put that world to the side and I'm going to come up with something completely different. And I sat there and I worked on this new series for like 6 months, and I didn't get a word on the page. I was like, okay, I had a lot of notes. I wrote a lot of notes. I had a lot of brainstorming, but I hadn't, started chapter 1, and I was supposed to turn in the book in like 3 months, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm so screwed. And so I certainly have sat down a few times and been like, oh, what am I gonna do next? Or what have I done to myself? And now we've sort of fallen into a rhythm of I generally, and even with the Night Angel books, I write a book it takes me about 2 years. The Night Angel books were about 155,000 words. And now I'm writing books that are, 250 and 300,000 words, still in 2 years. So I've gotten faster. It just doesn't look like it. So.
Well, and that you're talking about that 6 months preparation to write that book. I think a lot of people would look at that as you're just procrastinating because you don't know what to do, or you may be gathering information because you don't know what to do. You can't just spin a novel out of nothing when you have very specific rules and the way things are going to work. A lot of that is gathering information that then fuels the rest of the process. Right. So in building this magic system, was there a lot of, and you talked about earlier that thinking through the sociological implications and things like that. Did you bounce this off of anyone? Was this just all, kind of running out every scenario on paper that you could think of? How do you start testing those things?
Gosh, I don't even know. I mean, I certainly talk to my wife about stuff. I bounce some ideas off of her and get excited about things. And then I write little things on little scraps of paper, and it drives her crazy because, she'll find little scraps of paper, tucked into my jeans or something and be like, I don't know if this is the next book idea or if this is just something you're never going to care about. Should I throw this away? Is this garbage? Or is this gold? I know. So it's more just I guess that's what you're spending the 6 months doing it's just brainstorming, and it's for me I read a lot of history, and so it's like, okay, well, let's read about Barbary pirates, or let's read about in fantasy novels people tend to shy away from slavery. For very good reasons, right? Slavery is still a really brutal thing to talk about in this country. Has left some really, deep scars here in the American psyche. But I like looking at this. I'm like, well, gee, that's, slavery's been part of economic systems throughout the world, very different economic systems, for pretty much all of human history that I can gather. And so I was like, okay, I know that the Greeks and Romans treated it really differently, although they still totally discriminated against their slaves, but their slavery wasn't racial. And it was like, well, you lose a war, you could be a slave. Oh, that sucks. Everybody could possibly be a slave. The Vandals and Visigoths come down or something, and you're like, oh boy, we need to win because there's no prison here. You get killed or you can get enslaved. It's a brutal world. So I would read up on those things, and I'd be like, oh, that's an amazing story, or that's an amazing structure, or I end up using these things like the silver mines. Well, the silver mines had in ancient Greece, actually in a town called Lorien. Which I actually used the name in my in world. I just used it as sort of an homage. It's like if you were a bad slave, you would get sent to the mines at Lorien, and you would usually die, and you would live a few months working. It's a work camp. It's a death camp. I mean, but it's a work camp until you die. and so they had even things, to keep their slaves in line. So I would love doing I love doing some research like that, of just reading stuff, and I think of all of history as my oyster. I'm a magpie. I get to grab the shiny bits and see if I can weave them into my nest in a way that's constructive, and then maybe someday somebody sees that and goes, so wait, Lorien, I swear I've seen that name before. So I like to have fun like that, and that's part of what that prep time is for me. Is it's exposing myself to a bunch of new ideas to me, old ideas in the world.
Gotcha. You talked about wanting to pick a new setting that was not medieval Europe, like so much fantasy is. Did you feel a necessity to do that, or was this just a challenge to yourself to kind of have a completely clean slate and do something?
For me, it was it was just a challenge for myself. It was just I like to take on. I'd like to grow as an artist with every book I write. I like to do new things and harder things rather than just coasting on the things that I know I do well. So it was like, I want to see if I can do this. And there's good reasons not to do it, is what I've discovered. And one thing I do well is I keep the pace up, and my fantasy tends to move pretty quickly. But when you take on, I just call them expositional burdens, things you have to explain. Well, a totally new culture, you have to explain. What's a satrap and a satrapa versus you just say a king or a queen, or you say a duke or a duchess. People know what a duke and a duchess is, right? And okay, and what is this prism? He has this kind of power, but it's sort of religious, and I can't say, well, it's sort of like the Japanese shogun, or not the Japanese shogun, the Japanese emperor in around 1600. Which is what he's like. He's kept busy doing religious duties all the time, but pretty much the shogun has all the power, and you try to keep the emperor busy, but every once in a while the emperor tries to come in and actually be an emperor. So you have to explain everything to people, and then so if your cultures are complicated and different from each other, that's one thing. If your character is different from normal, that's another thing. If your magic system is complicated, that's another thing. And if the politics are complicated, that's another thing. And if the history is complicated and matters, that's another thing still. And then if there's mythology, those are wonderful world building things. But the more different they are from what people have seen before, the more you have to spend page time explaining them. And finding artful ways to do that so that people are reading the story, and at the end of the story, they've just learned a lot of stuff without realizing it is really hard. I mean, the other way to do it is you have the professor, sit down with you in chapter 2 and say,
or the old blind sage who does a complete info dump for 100,000 words.
Yeah, exactly. And there's merits to an info dump, and people joke about an info dump, but like, and I do too. There are merits to being like, here, I'm just going to tell you in 5 pages so that we don't have to dole this out for 50. Right. Like, here, just stay with me for a second. And Dickens would do this, right? Like, well, I'm going to tell you about this boy, but first I need to tell you about his parents. And actually, it is really helpful to know about his parents and what happened to them. But anyway, so I think. I try not to info dump, but I see some merits to it now. Having done it the other way a lot, there's an efficiency to that.
Yeah. Oh man. What was the biggest challenge in bringing a character like Kip into the story?
Well, the biggest challenge, I guess, is I wanted to portray Kip realistically in a number of ways. I wanted him to seem like he was 15. I wanted him to seem like he's a fat kid for a reason. He's eating to fill, emotional voids, kind of thing. His mom is an addict, and does not treat him well. And Kip is, at the beginning of the story, he's a little bit whiny, but he tries to turn it to humor, but but he's pretty damaged. And so having a kid who comes across like a real 15-year-old, and most people, write 15-year-olds like they're 25. And having him seem like he's immature at times, like he's a smart kid. He doesn't understand that at first, that he's really bright. He thinks he's not. But so he's got like, uneven maturity. Like he can understand stuff, but then he'll go and do stupid stuff anyway, because that's what 15-year-olds do.
Right.
So I wanted to have him seem psychologically real, and yet he's the hero of the story, or he and Gavin sort of split duties. So you have to like him, and my biggest challenge, I think, has come in realizing that you think that's a one tightrope to walk, and it's not, because readers are holding the other end of the tightrope. So if you're 19 and you are deeply embarrassed of who you were when you were 15, when you run into a kid like Kip, you're going to kind of hate him, because he reminds you of stuff that really pisses you off about yourself. And you won't have any compassion for him. Whereas if you read that character when you're 25 or 35, you can go, oh God, I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, you have to kind of grow into that empathy.
Yeah, you grow into the empathy. So I, or no, certain people do. Some people just can't take anybody who ever feels sorry for themselves. And so so different people connected to Kip, or didn't. Which is why the nameless, faceless, hero is so often done. It's who's basically hardworking and basically courageous and basically good. It's really easy to step into that kid's shoes, and the world is unfair to him or her, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Right. Like those characters are really easy to empathize with, and I think Kip, and to another extent, it was the same problem with Liv. One of Kip's love interests or infatuation interests in the book. I had this other character who listens to some lies, and she gets convinced that the world is pretty crappy to her, and she's right. The deck is stacked, and it pisses her off, and she doesn't know certain things that the readers do know. And I thought readers would empathize with her a little more, and a lot of readers are just like, please kill her. and I was like, I thought people would understand why she went wrong, or she made some bad choices, but I like her more than a lot of readers did. So I think those have been two of my challenges. Have been realizing that how you feel, and all authors should probably take note of this, realizing that how you feel about your characters is different than what your readers are going to feel about your characters, and you might know something in that character's past or whatever that totally redeems them, but if the reader doesn't know that, then they might just not care. So like that first impression really, really matters. And Kip's a fat kid. The first time you see him, he's like pulling up his pants because they're sagging off his butt. And some people are just like, I hate fat people. Yeah, and I'm not saying that's the only reason why you could dislike one of my characters. Of course not. Like people could think he's flawed for all sorts of reasons, or my writing of him flawed. But like.
Did you just accuse your entire readership of prejudice?
Yeah,
you heard it here first,
I was being
people.
very careful. Okay, I might have messed up one or two other things. Those haters that hate.
Haters.
Good Lord, these kind of things end up on Reddit, and so But yes. So I think I have to remember that when you're trying to write unappealing characters or initially unappealing characters,
Right.
you have to keep that in mind. But that's one of the things I wanted to do with Kip, and that was something I was willing to do, and you get to see him grow, and I hope you get to see him grow, in sort of a staggered, two steps forward, one step back, kind of manner, but throughout these books. And so that's
like most of us.
Yeah, do. Yeah. And like, oh, he did this right. And then the next book he's screwing up again. Are you serious? Or he's cracking, dick jokes. Like, dude, don't do that. And it's like, well, he's 18. Yeah. And he's hanging out with his guy friends. They're going to make some dick jokes. That's just, have you been around 18-year-old boys? I mean, young men, even if they're, in life and death situations, or perhaps especially if they're in life and death situations, they're going to laugh at inappropriate stuff. So I want to keep that with Kip, that he is young. But he's also becoming kind of this incredible man, who's just amazing.
So you and I had this conversation, I believe it was over email, when we were talking about the Blood Mirror coming out, book 4 in the series, and I was we're talking about my 12-year-old son, who is a huge fan of the Lightbringer series. He'll be 13 in the spring, but you gave me a little heads up. You said, okay, things progress a little bit in book 4. You might want to read it before him and just make sure, he's ready. Because the character is growing up and he is progressing, and things are going to happen to him that happen to everybody. And you have to, if you're going to tell the story honestly, up to here, you've got to keep being honest with it. What are there any specific challenges to bringing a character up and going through adolescence and into adulthood? Are any of these certain things harder to portray and be true and realistic without it just getting weird?
well, I mean, I guess as an author, there's always certain things you leave out of the picture, and like. Oh man. Okay. So just
say it. You're this is a safe place.
We don't need to know about your bathroom habits. Like that's not really story relevant. What's going on in there? Don't need to know. Thanks. Let's just move along with the story. Did they bring toilet paper with them in their saddlebags? Don't need to know that, or did they use leaves? Did they ever use poison ivy? I mean, maybe you'd use that one, but so you choose where your gaze is as a writer, or where the camera focuses. But to me, it's like if something happens to the characters, a major relationship, or somebody gets married, and they have sex for the first time, or one or the other of those, without the other, like that's a major life event for somebody, and if that's your main character and it's going to change, if everyth's hunky-dory and look, okay, they're in a romantic relationship and they go into the bedroom, and what they do in the bedroom has no effect on what happens when they come out of the bedroom, it's not plot necessary to put it in there. Some authors will choose to put it in there because they enjoy writing about that and their readers enjoy reading about that, but it's not necessary to the book. Now, like when you read George R. R. Martin, there's a ton of sex, but the sex is always done because it's on the screen. I mean, at least in the books, I haven't watched the show, but in the books, when it's on the screen, it's like the characters are doing something that matters to what they're gonna do later. It's like, okay, you did this to me in the bedroom, I'm gonna kill you. So you can't just in that case, if that's the story you're telling, you can't have the characters walk into the bedroom and it's like the 50s, and then the wind is blowing in the curtains, and then the next day they come out of there and one of them wants to kill the other one. So if it's part of the story, it's part of the story. If it's an important part of the story that changes the direction of what the characters are going to do, you need to talk about that. So to me, it was pretty obvious that in this book I was going to have to write some sex scenes, and it's not particularly something I look forward to. I was like, oh, geez, like they don't have the bad dialogue in fiction awards. They have the bad sex scene in fiction awards, and I think probably every author, who's ever written a sex scene, like when those awards come out, kind of looks at it real quick to make sure their name isn't there. So it's like, oh boy, okay, so here we go. Today we have to talk about, what's going to go on over here for this character. So I certainly approached those with some reticence. At the same time, it's like, okay, you have to tell what needs to be told, what needs to be communicated, and with an eye to what you're trying to accomplish. I mean, if what you're trying to accomplish is to titillate your readers, then you're using a certain kind of language and imagery. And if what you're trying to do is show the growth of a relationship or the stymieing of the growth of a relationship, then you're free to use a different kind of vocabulary, and the camera doesn't need to be in certain places to see what's going on. So I opt for the latter, and that's because my work is a lot about character growth and redemption and action and treachery and all these big twists and turns. So that I went in knowing that I was going to be writing that, but also like knowing there's going to be some 12-year-olds who read this book, and I wouldn't give this book to a 12-year-old. But this is where the book needs to go. So I guess this is what happens with this character. So.
Well, that's a great rule for writers, that if it advances the story in a meaningful way, and it's going to be important, then this is a part of life that we need to talk about. And you can opt to use the imagery that suits the story, but it's ultimately about the story, not about the particular thing. So I think that's a great takeaway.
And I think that could be for anything that's really difficult in life. Whether it's a conversation between a husband and wife over something that's painful, or whether it's a medical procedure. Do I need to know really in depth about how they take out this person's intestine and shorten it and stick it? Well, maybe for some stories you absolutely don't, and maybe for some stories you absolutely do.
Yeah, that's the ones that you absolutely do are probably not on my reading list.
Right.
So it's probably not up there. But yeah, I get it. So the new book is The Blood Mirror. It's number 4 in the Lightbringer series. I thought this was a trilogy.
Oh gosh.
I distinctly remember you saying that Orbit said, "Brent, we want your next trilogy."
No, the next 3 books, they said.
The next 3. Okay, I got you. See, I projected my own prejudice on that.
Well, so, I had told them, I had pitched it as a trilogy, and as soon as I finished the first book, I called up Orbit and I said, "It's not going to be 3 books. It's going to be 4." I think I can do it in 4, is what I told them. And so they took off trilogy, and they said the Lightbringer series. And in the UK, they didn't get the memo. And so there's still some Lightbringer trilogies floating out there in the UK with that on the first cover, on the cover of the first book. So dang it. Yes, but the story grew in the telling, I suppose.
Yeah. So there, at this point, there's going to be 5 books.
Yes.
Is that right?
And I am pretty doggone certain. You always have to leave a little bit of doubt just in case you totally screw up again. But I've got the end point. It's it was more a matter when I was writing the 4th book. It was like I was having to cut stuff that I thought was great in order just to fit the story into one book. It's like, okay, yeah, this story wants to be better. It's deeper and more resonant if I had this other thing, but I need to cut that because, I'm sorry, he's going to have to get from here to there in 2 chapters rather than 6. even though interesting stuff happens. So like I looked at it and I was like, okay, if I do this, does this stand on its own? Does it justify itself as a novel? Does stuff happen? Or is this padding? Because we certainly read padded fantasy where you're like, I didn't need 200 pages with this minor character to experience the fullness of this world. Like this, I didn't want to spend that many pages with some river merchant. Thanks. Okay, like get me back to the main characters. Yeah. So I was really careful about that, and I felt burned before, and I hate that feeling. So I didn't want anybody to feel burned. And so mostly people haven't been. Every once in a while you get somebody who says, "What? I thought this was 4 books," and now they're mad at you. But
yeah, and I was obviously teasing you. We spoke about this before we started recording, and I said I was going to tease you about it a little bit. But but I can say this because I've read all 4 books now, and The Blood Mirror is not just a book to extend a trilogy. When you followed this band of characters from book 1 to now 4 books, this is the obvious growth of the character. And like you said, the story grew in the telling. It's obvious that it did. It's one of my most favorite series. It's that way for a reason. And if you decided to carry it out to 10 books, I'd buy them all. But we probably don't need to.
Right. Well, yeah, it's there were certain options that I long ago said, yeah, we're not gonna expand it to that. Yes, there are other places, and it's when you get characters that you love who are doing interesting things, the pages can really pile up. But it's like, okay, well, what was the story we promised we were going to tell, and let's tell that story. So.
Do you ever get comparisons between the Lightbringer series and Green Lantern?
I have gotten a few of those, and when people first brought that up to me, I like had no idea what they were talking about because I'd never read Green Lantern ever, and I was like, really? Okay, so then I went and I bought a few Green Lantern, series, Blackest Night, I think, or was. And one other one, and I was like, I feel like this is full of all sorts of allusions to a lot of DC, right? Is it a DC property? DC characters that I really don't know, and I was like, okay, well, there are some similarities, but
the magical constructions. When I first picked up the Black Prism, that was one of the first things I thought about was, he can create things with magic, kind of the way Green Lantern does with his ring, but this has more lasting effect. And that was a kind of a fleeting illusion.
No, absolutely. It's there. It's totally there. And it's like sometimes you're just, when you're making up stuff, you're going to make up something that's kind of similar to what somebody else made
absolutely. Yeah.
That's way more popular than you are. And you're like, crap. I didn't even know about that.
But to me, the way you do it with Luxon is more real. It's more grounded. There are leftover stuff from this. Right. There's real tangible effects to the world, and not a bad comparison.
No, not at all. Yeah. It was just sort of was sort of funny. I'm like, I'm going to look into that at some point. Oh, yep. There's and they have different colors. And some of the colors, well, they stand for different things than mine do, but yep, I can see why you would say that.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Well, Brent, we're way over an hour now, and thanks for coming back. The new book is called The Blood Mirror. I'm going to put links to your website and all stuff in the show notes. So I guess book 5 will be out sometime 2 years.
Sorry, you're starting to cut it out. Skype is doing this again. Can you still hear me?
Oh yeah, you're chopping.
No, I think I've lost you. Okay, yeah.
There you are.
Should we reconnect real quick? Yeah, let's.
Let's do that. I'm just trying to.
Yeah, sure.
So let me. Your site, So that they out in about 2 years?
That is the plan. That is the plan
Okay.
right now. I'm leery of making promises, but yes, I have already made a tremendous amount of I've done a tremendous amount of work on it already, and we're pushing forward. Not just sitting somewhere, reading my reviews or something. I'm doing what I love. So yeah, next book should be out in about 2 years, and I'm sure we'll have like official announcement whenever that's official enough. But that's my track record.
Sure thing. Brent, thank you so much for coming on. I always love talking to you, and we're gonna keep looking forward to how this series ends and what comes out of that brain of yours next.
well, thanks for letting me jabber. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. You've been listening to the Author Stories podcast with Hank Garner. You can find all of the archives of the show over at hankgarner.com. When you're there, please subscribe to the show and leave a comment over on iTunes or Google Play. You can even subscribe at YouTube and Stitcher Radio. Thanks for listening. If you enjoy what I do, podcasting or my writing, please check out my Patreon campaign. There's a link at hankgarner.com. Be sure to tune in every Tuesday and Friday for brand new episodes of the Author Stories podcast. Thanks for listening.